right, everybody, welcome. I'm Howie Howard from Mr. Furious Records. Today on Dat Fury Radio, Harmonoia by remst8, aka Michael Carlson, with Michael himself, returning guest. What's up, Michael?
Not much. Just getting through another day.
Getting through another day. Here we are. I'm just going to go ahead and fire up the music. There we go. It'll fade in. So, Harmonoia, very enjoyable piece, live piece.
Thank you.
Your Bandcamp page, remst8.bandcamp.com. That's REMST numeral 8. Link in the description. Goes into quite a lot of detail describing this piece and what went into it. So for the we'll maybe talk about some of those details in the course of this show, but rather than have you just go through them again, I want to ask how did you construct this set or this piece, or how did these sounds come together in your mind to make what we hear?
Great question. So it started with the field recording that you're hearing now. That was a gift to me from Michael Anderson, aka Drucka. He and I have kind of shared field recordings back and forth over the years. He's used a few of mine in his music, and he gifted this to me saying, hey, here you go. It's a reciprocation. So started by just listening to the recording and kind of figuring out what would kind of work well with it. And then, as with my other live sets, it's usually a combination of what's something new that I can bring to the table, what's something that I've done before that is a little bit of familiar territory for me, so it gives me a place of comfort, so to speak. And then it's just a matter of trying to figure out how to get from point A to point B and figuring out the points in between.
And you tend to work very long form, which I love. But the more distinct movements in this piece did feel newish for a remst8 project. Did the field recordings suggest that as well, or how did you arrive at that?
No, that's actually most of my live sets. It's kind of a medley of various things. And so for this particular one, I actually kind of broke out by section what the various elements were that went into it. So it's, like I said, it's usually trying to bring in something new, one or two things that I've done before, and trying to find a nice flow for them. And so it's just trying to find a nice flow that kind of, it's usually drone based, but I'm trying to make it so it's a journey from one place to another rather than sitting still. Even though it's, in the moment, it feels like you're sitting still, but it's one of those things where I really enjoy, surprising you that eventually you realize, oh, wait, it's not the same thing that I was listening to before, even though I might not have detected the change.
Yeah, and I guess what I'm sensing in this is where I feel like a lot of your pieces, they have that journey, but it's a journey through a pretty distinct space a lot of times. Mm-hmm. This is a journey through like 3 or 4 fairly distinct worlds.
Sure. Yeah.
And that's something that really jumped out at me.
Thank you. Maybe that's kind of giving the game away, that I didn't do such a great job coming up with a completely smooth flow from one to the other.
Oh no, the smoothness is definitely there.
Sure.
I hope it's coming through. I enjoyed it very much.
Sure. Yeah, that's
as another take on the remst8 approach, but with some what I felt like were some new elements mixed in, or some new
There were definitely more new things than old things in this one.
There we go. All right, so I have a question in mind, but I want to, now that we've talked a little bit, I want to let the listeners have a minute or two with the music here. Yeah, very nice, very nice. So with Drekka, a fairly frequent collaborator of yours, did we talk about these field recordings on the last episode that you were on? Or that's ringing a bell for me. Or did that happen? Did a similar process happen before?
Similar process. You mean
in terms of someone giving you field recordings and
yeah? So I think probably what you're thinking of is that's kind of like Drekka's MO. Is he likes to exchange audio with friends, cohorts, and collaborators, and it's like a great big melting pot of sounds that he works to kind of like recycle and reimagine and rework. And so he's kind of like built up this huge network of friends that are also artists. And so it's, so you're probably thinking of, that's kind of how the Tremble with Joy album came together. Was he kind of coordinated the assemblage of disparate sounds from different people and, herded that into a particular direction. And so
yeah,
that's probably what you're thinking of. Yeah,
definitely. You said this was more new ideas than old. Do you consider this... Are you done with those new ideas kind of now? Is this the form they're going to take, or will you be continuing to work with them?
I will be continuing to work with some of them.
Sure.
So the very end, the final movement of this particular piece is one of the newer compositions, and I'm working that into a future release that's coming out soon. I've kind of patterned a little bit after Drekka in that just because I've worked on something once, that doesn't mean I'm done with it. That just means it's right for possibly revisiting later and maybe reinterpreting or leveraging some of the pieces in something else. And so similarly, that's kind of like what I like to do with my live sets. My very first live set was basically trying to figure out how to de-automate some pre-tracked songs, and I didn't like that quite so much. And so then I tried to move in a direction where all of my live sets were completely different from what I would track in Renoise, as a song. But I've kind of ping-ponged back and forth, and now I'm kind of in this middle ground where it's a little bit of both, where I try to pull in some things that are completely new and unique just for the live set, but also pulling in some things from that I've already tracked, previously in Renoise that lends itself well enough to a live performance environment. And so
do you have a... Go ahead.
And so that's kind of part of my shtick as remst8 is when I publish music, I assign a version number to it. Some of that is from my software engineering background, but a lot of it is from my kind of perfectionist kind of need to always make it better. There's always something that could be improved with it. And so assigning a version number gives me the kind of permission to say, okay, it's this version, this can go out the door, but that doesn't mean I have to be done with it. That means I can come back to it later, revise it, and put out a new version. And so there's kind of a lot of that as well.
Do you have a unique tracker session for a given live performance then? That's pulling in those different pieces?
Yes, absolutely. So it depending on how much time I've got to prepare and how much material I want to pull in, it can take me anywhere from 3 weeks to a couple of months to pull all the right stuff together into a cohesive live set. And so a lot of that is taking portions of tracks from different Renoise XRNS files, compiling them into one big, larger file, pulling in all the various sounds, and then kind of creating my own user interface for controlling all of these things with MIDI Designer Pro, and then mixing all the elements together so that all the volumes are kind of matchy and that it actually sounds like a cohesive thing. So it's basically a huge patchwork of stuff.
That's a really cool way of organizing a live set, though. And I guess I hadn't realized. Well, I mean, obviously you go very deep with it, and you can go as deep as you want, and you wouldn't necessarily have to go as deep as you choose to. But like, I hadn't realized you would be even bringing in all the tracker lanes. Is that the terminology? Like, I imagined a lot of it might be like you render out a wave, and then that's a huge long sample that you can just trigger once.
Yeah,
as some of it even.
Sure, that would be the easy way to do it.
Right, which is where my brain went.
Yeah, no, it's really, so depending upon which material I'm pulling in, sometimes I'm actually stitching together the tracked elements of the various songs, and in many cases it's basically it's sort of like the digital version of tape loops, where it's just all of the various source samples are just free running as loops, and then I'm just kind of mixing them in and out and applying effects and things of that nature. So that's, for this particular set, that's what most of it was, where it was just basically free running loops of sounds, and then I would use the MIDI interfaces to fade them in, apply effects, sometimes trigger some things, but that's mostly it. Not that anyone in the audience can tell how much or how little effort I'm putting into it.
I hope people can, at least the listeners who are curious enough can imagine what this looks like, or look at, we linked to a bunch of videos about trackers the last time you were on, and I'll link to that episode. But, I know just enough that I can imagine what this all looks like and understand. While this isn't a type of music making I've done, I understand the concepts enough that I can imagine how you're putting it all together, and all the lanes and all the samples and effects and automation that goes into them, and the designing of a unique interface to perform this session. And I just think that's really cool. I mean, it's a very interesting way of making music.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. It's just that's the what works for me.
And it's a rabbit hole you've been falling down for years and years and years.
Yes. Yes.
It's not generally where you would start with the tracker world.
No. No.
Let's do another kind of intentional listening here and check back in, because we have traveled quite far, smoothly but far, in the Odyssey here. Yeah, I really love this, and I think this is a great entry point for people. If you haven't listened to remst8 before, I think this is a great point to jump in. I will be returning to this. I can tell a lot. This is one of my favorite pieces of yours.
Oh wow, thank you. I've talked a little bit about how I assemble my live sets, but I forgot the most important step. And the first one is listening to my prior sets and then panicking that I've peaked and there's no way I could possibly do something better than the last one I did. So it means a lot to hear you say that you really enjoy this one.
Well, there's that is an important step in the process. There's a positive kernel in there in a way, in terms of thinking the last one is good.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right, to try and put a good spin on it.
It's also just a little bit of dysfunction as far as self-validation goes, because it's like, if someone does a thing, and it's not me, that's the coolest thing in the world. If I do the exact same thing, it's not at all cool. And so it's like when it's been a while since I've listened to some of my older music, I'll go back and I'll listen to it. It's just like, oh man, that's so cool. I wish I could do that. It's like, no, you did do this, you idiot. And so I'm just dumb.
Do you remember how?
Remember how
like,
what?
When you hear old stuff, do you remember how you did it, and could you recreate it if you chose to, or do you have the files? You could just look if you needed to.
Yeah, I have the files and I could just look. But to actually answer your question, I would say I wouldn't immediately be able to recreate it. I'd have to do a lot of thinking. The nature of tracked music is it's not like, strumming the same 8 chords on your guitar 80 million times as you're trying to figure things out. It's basically, I type in some code and I listen to it, and I go back and I change some stuff and I listen to it. And yes, there's still a lot of iteration, but it's not the kind of iteration where I am memorizing the the notes or the automation parameters or any of the other things. And so I've got kind of this interesting amnesia when it comes to how did I make a thing. But to your point, I can just open up the file and look at what I did. So I don't have to remember it as long as I've got good backups.
But that, in a way, like the editorial mindset is baked in right from the beginning. So you might only do something once, and if you like it and it's perfect, it's just there and it's saved, and you don't have to repeat it. It was only done that one time, and
exactly,
it'll just stay there until you change it.
Yep.
I'm running into that. So I've been tracking a ton of guitars, and when I started this part of the recording process for the album I'm working on, I just knew I'm setting up different pedals with different pedal settings for every part, kind of, and I just knew my choice was either to take just extensive notes and photos and everything and to like document the whole thing from the beginning, or just embrace the unrepeatability of certain sounds. And I went with path B.
You feel good about it?
What's that?
Do you feel good about that choice?
I feel good about it for myself.
Right. Okay, good.
I know I will get a few questions from Drew and, maybe a few people on a forum saying, what pedal did you use on, XYZ part of XYZ song? And I will not know and will not be able to tell. I can make an educated guess.
Sure.
But the actual details are gone. I mean, I've got my favorites and some stuff I can pick out by ear, but not all of it.
Music is ephemeral by its very nature.
Sometimes it's just a moment.
Yep.
The combination of field recordings and synthesized sound really does put me in the mind space of a journey through a fictional world. Cool. And this is my kind of preferred mode of interpretation or fiction anyway, but kind of a science fictional world, right? Of this. Like, this has a very Blade Runner feel to me, but with grass and puddles.
Right on. Cool. Yeah, I usually don't try to put too much context around the music I make. I prefer to let each listener to create their own. And so I enjoy hearing how, the kind of imagery that people come back with when they hear my music. And so the Blade Runner angle was not one I was expecting, but I absolutely appreciate that.
Yeah, and that's exactly why I'm offering it. I wasn't expecting or looking for confirmation, but yeah, just sharing the impression that I get, which is, I'm trying to own also the projection piece, or like I'm definitely bringing my favorite things to my interpretation.
Right on.
I like grass and puddles just as much as Blade Runner, so I like both things. I guess that is something about remst8 music, again, to my interpretation. It does tend to be very wet and damp.
Yeah, field recordings of thunderstorms is kind of a trope. I own that.
And I love that. I love a thunderstorm. I love being inside during the thunderstorm,
Yeah,
and hearing it while being dry. But yeah, I think we're gonna have some of that weather this coming week. That'll be
Yes, we are. Yep.
That'll be nice.
Actually, I'm trying to think back. Have I actually done a live set that did not include rain or thunder or other water sounds? And I'm not sure I can say that I haven't.
Maybe not. Maybe desert sounds is a new frontier.
There you go.
I'll have to go somewhere and send you some desert field recordings.
Please do.
Tiny detour and bit of shameless self-promotion, but in terms of thunderstorms, for anyone who's interested, on my Night Mode album, Only Mostly Dead, the full version, the 35-track version, the second to last track, called Your Ears You'll Keep, and I'll Tell You Why, is a fully synthesized thunderstorm on the MS-20 using a patch from the original manual.
Right on.
It had actually a lot of the tracks on that project were or started from patches from the manual. I was just going through the manual, doing
That's
every
cool.
patch in the manual just to learn, and I found the instrument so inspiring. A lot of times I'd come up with a jam on the spot and record it, and
That's great.
but yeah, you could make a pretty good thunderstorm with the MS-20, and so
Awesome.
I did.
That is an angle I've thought about a few times, but haven't quite explored fully. Is actually creating the environment rather than just using field recordings.
I think a blend could be really productive.
Could be.
Something about so of course on the MS-20, the noise for the rain and wind, it's synthesized noise. You're not, you get the gist, but it's not a convincing rain sound. And the thunder isn't either, but what the thunder does have is this incredible compression and perception of mass that it just feels like the air, like with a really close lightning strike and sound of thunder, like it feels like the air is breaking. And I forget how the patch is constructed, but however it is, it's like a hyper realistic sensation of that.
Cool.
Whatever it is about that sound, that the shockwaves coming through, really tricky to master because the dynamic range was just so far above the noise. Mm-hmm. But it kind of had to be, and that was actually one of the toughest tracks to master.
Yes, I can imagine. The field recording that I used for this portion, it starts off with a really loud crack of thunder, and I curse myself every single time I have to mix it or master it, because it's like, oh, it's so much louder than everything else. And if I were to really compress it down to match, I can tell it's super compressed, and I just can't do that. And so yeah. That's the tricky thing about recording thunderstorms, is every once in a while you'll get that loud crack of thunder that either it fits in or it doesn't.
That's where, and I don't know how you handled it, but that's where my first thought is like clip gain and just like make it 2 samples, right? So that you can control the levels independently.
Yeah.
I talked over the dynamic crest of this wonderful work with my own BS, but this comes to a very satisfying conclusion.
Thank you.
Which is just one more reason why I think this is a great hopping on point for anyone at the remst8 station waiting for a train. This is the one to get on, and then you can take the journey through the others.
Absolutely.
And if you're already on the train, I mean, great, fresh scenery.
Yeah, this track has actually gone through 2 iterations since I originally made it, and then for this set. And then it's gone through at least 3 more iterations for its next use in an upcoming release. So, never fully done.
Cool. Well, I will look forward to another version on this. Good. I like hearing the ending there.
Thank you. Yeah, that
Harmonoia, remst8. Sorry, what were you going to say, Michael?
No, I was just going to say I was actually quite proud of how lucky I got with the timing of the various musical elements versus the thunder and the field recording. So that's how I knew I was going to go ahead and unleash this one to the world, because, I got to the end. It's like, yeah, got the timing just right.
Sometimes it just works.
Sometimes it works.
And when it happens in a live setting, all the better. remst8.bandcamp.com. Any other things we should talk about or plug or link to?
No, just the Bandcamp, or if you want to go find me other places, remst8.com.
Definitely. All right, well, listeners, we're going to let you go for the week. Michael and I are going to stay on and record another episode that you will hear in 3 or 4 weeks, something like that. Not quite sure. But we'll have shows in between, obviously. And, listen to Harmonoia. And we'll catch you later.